Sailors of Reddit, what's the most unusual thing you've experienced while at sea?
My area occasionally gets phytoplankton blooms. If you're boating at night and sail into a bloom, the wake of your boat will suddenly start glowing blue. It's pretty darn bright, easily seen with the naked eye, and appears out of nowhere. 1 minute you're sailing in complete darkness, the next you're in glowing water.
When the water is dead flat, and the sky is clear, at night, it's really possible to get completely disoriented and fall in. You can't tell where the water begins and the sky ends, so you always keep your hand on the lifeline.
Was sailing off the coast of the Big Island, Hawaii in February. We were mostly interested in fishing since the wind had died down. There were no other boats around that were visible and it was a very calm and peaceful day. Now often you'll see humpback whales breaching in February and you can also hear them singing if you are underwater. That is cool enough, but this encounter was awesome. I was baiting a hook, and suddenly on the starboard side of the boat a pod of about 20 melonhead whales comes up right beside the boat and they just start staring us down. I lean over and this one dude moves a little closer and just keeps moving his head so he can eye me up and down. They all just kept staring at us with an expression of WTF are these? Who interesting, don't look like they can swim at all. They eyed us at close quarters for about 5 minutes and then just took off. The weirdest part of the encounter was the close eye contact I had with the first whale was definitely two individuals sizing each other up. Best part of the whole day.
I can't recall seeing anything really unusual aside from wildlife and natural phenomenon. Passing through an area off Brazil, we saw a huge number of dolphins, whales and seabirds feeding on what must have been massive shoals of fish. Plus I did get to see the most magnificent sunrises and sunsets, spectacular, clear moonlit nights, the aurora, Arctic ice, penguins in southern Argentina, albatrosses, polar bears. Throw in a couple of trips through Suez and Panama canals too.
Lots of crazy little things, but I was on a ship that lost a man overboard in the Atlantic. Reports were that a lifesaver was thrown immediately after he fell in. The lookout said he saw a swell overtake him as he was going toward the lifesaver, and that was it. We searched for hours, never seeing a single sign. Searchlights in the water. Dark-shaped swimming past them. Makes you realize how small we are in nature. Still think about it to this day.
Migrants from Haiti. Literally floating on a makeshift raft constructed of soda bottles and spray foam.
Flying fish timed a wave right and jumped out the water and through an open hatch directly into the galley. Freeboard was like 7 meters. The chefs shat themselves, haha.
Off the coast of South Africa, I worked aboard a cage diving boat. I witnessed many amazing things. But one day a 5+ meter female white shark approached the boat. She simply hung around and observed us, showing no interest in the cage, the chum, or the bait lines. Every time she returned to the surface, my brain would temporarily refuse to accept what I was witnessing due to how enormous she was. Like, that is what? It's so big. Jesus. She was very composed and observant. It was the first time I truly understood that, despite the fact that it is entirely foreign, there is some sort of intelligence operating in that brain. Not a sailor but a lifelong surfer, so I've spent plenty of time in and around the ocean. I was camping on the beach in Baja with some friends when I noticed the moon was going to be setting over the ocean in a few hours. The moon that night was just a sliver, almost like a fingernail. We had actually gotten kind of skunk wave-wise that day, and into the night the ocean was almost completely flat, like a lake flat. No wind as well, just sheet glass. Not a cloud in the sky. Just when the moon lowered to the horizon, it started to glow bright orange. And just when it hit the edge of the ocean, the reflection shimmered all the way to the sand. It looked as if the moon was floating on the sea for just a few minutes. It was one of the most beautiful sights I have ever seen. Far more beautiful than any sunset. Lots of spooky stuff here, so I gonna lighten up the mood. Northwest of Australia, A couple of days away from Dampier. 48 watch evening time. Already dark outside. Slowly the water was becoming green-bluish. You could distinguish the black horizon and the pitch-black outline of the ship. But the water was becoming more and more bright with this strange color. When the phenomenon was at its peak, the water was like a huge light was below it. Together with the darkness of a moonless night, the view was unique and magnificent. It seems that it was some kind of bioluminescent bleach. If you search it on Google you can get an idea, but trust me, that night it was much greater. It is usually around the ship's hull as it moves through the waves. But what I'm talking about was for as far as the eye could see. I have heard many stories from older seafarers. One claimed that the ship was at the exact position an earthquake occurred near Japan and the whole ship jumped. Tough to believe this one, but worth mentioning. Another one that the ship passed over the tsunami of 2004 in Indian Ocean and the speed of the ship became zero when it climbed over the wave. Sailing through a moonless night, the wind has piped up and like proofrock I begin hearing the mermaids singing each to each. The first time you see a large sea turtle is kinda strange, they look like floating boulders. But the sea, for as strange as it is an amazing place as well, seeing a flying fish or looking in the water and seeing fish as far as you can see is incredible. I saw this quote on one of these once. The sea gives and takes in equal measure. I was on a run between California and Hawaii, and I was out on deck doing rounds on deck equipment, checking oil levels, etc. I saw one of those free-fall lifeboats just hanging out in the distance and was like, WTF. I called the bridge. They said a ship accidentally dropped their lifeboat a few years ago and now it turns up from time to time. Was glad to know no one was on it, but it gave me a brief scare.
Hurricane, typhoon, ship collision, sandstorm, insane fog on a small boat that took 6 hours to get back to dock versus 45 minutes.
Commercial fishing. I saw a dolphin giving birth with another holding her up. An oil rig being delivered that was so tall it disappeared in the clouds. And a seemingly empty cargo ship almost ran us over. The nastiest thing I ever saw was a man dressed in a nightgown tied to a bow in a storm for whining. I had also never seen a real tuna fish or Goliath grouper. They're as big as Volkswagens. I'm telling my partner's story. He is an Atlantic Ocean winter fisherman. He says the most unsettling thing that has happened to him was experiencing the doldrums in winter. With fog so thick you can barely see the ocean that is just a few feet over the side of the boat. They are in a 40-feet boat, so easily creamed by any tankers out there. Heavy fog rolls over them and everything just stops. No wind, barely a ripple in the water. And they just sat there watching their radars and whatnot to make sure they weren't in anyone's path and just waited for the fog to lift in the air to keep moving. Another creepy one is a friend had a man overboard. They were able to hook the guy's clothes with a gaff and were dragging him back on board. Remember, this is winter in the Atlantic Ocean. The boat had to turn around to come alongside the man overboard. He had been in the freezing water long enough that he couldn't move limbs. The gaff broke and the man fell back into the water. Due to the water in his coveralls and boots, they say he immediately sunk like a rock. In an almost instant he was gone. Couldn't see him. Couldn't bring his body home to his family. When I was in the Navy, I served on a ship with a flat earther. I don't know how someone goes to sea and continues to believe that the earth is flat. There's no experience that makes it more clear that the earth is round than sailing the ocean. Obligatory not a sailor. Me and some friends booked a yacht for my buddy's bachelor party, our first big vacation as a friend group after college. I can't say that whether this is completely unusual on the ocean. or if it was just me. But anyways, I woke up one night around 4 a.m. and decided to watch the sun come up and just enjoy the solitude after being with a bunch of guys partying for the last 8 days. I got out to the sitting area of the main deck, took a couple seconds to just enjoy the silence, and then there was just nothing. Like no sounds whatsoever. Our yacht was completely still, as there were no waves to rock it or even just slap up against the hull. It was eerily silent. So yeah, I tried to stay up there for a while, but eventually it was just unnerving and I went back down to my bunk. Woke back up a few hours later and everything was normal again. Nothing spooky or paranormal obviously, but I've just never seen the world that still before or since. St. Elmo's fire. Worked on a 90-feet fishing boat one summer off the coast of British Columbia. One calm and starry night, I went on deck to have a smoke, and I saw faint greenish-blue flames coming off the very top of the radio antenna. I excitedly ran below to tell my coworkers, and they laughed at me for being such a noob. Another thing, not so unusual but really cool to see and just slightly terrifying. I was on a rowboat that I borrowed from a neighbor, which I was using to catch rockfish off the west coast of Bowen Island. And one beautiful afternoon I rowed out and cast my line when a full-grown orca whale swam right underneath the, now seemingly way too small, rowboat. Clear as day and so close that I thought for sure its dorsal fin would capsize me. It was both terrifying and beautiful. Dead calm. Glass like water and low cloud. So perfectly flat water and no discernible features or horizon. Almost pure silence too. It's weird. So weird.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Heracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.